Your 7-iron didn't get shorter, it got weaker. That sounds like the same thing, and for years you've assumed it's your swing that betrayed you, the tempo that's off, the hands that turn over too early, the fatigue that creeps in by the back nine. But here's the part nobody at the pro shop mentions. The number stamped on the sole of that club is a story the manufacturer told you, not a measurement of what the club actually does anymore. The gap between your 7-iron and your 5-iron isn't a gap in your ability, it's a gap in the engineering, and once you see how it works, you'll never look at a club number the same way again. Because the truth is uncomfortable, quietly profitable, and hiding in plain sight on every range session where you stand there, shaking your head, wondering why the same swing produces different yardages. Now, let's be fair to yourself before we go further. Most golfers believe their iron distances are inconsistent because they're doing something wrong. And the industry loves that belief because a golfer who blames himself is a golfer who keeps spending. He buys lessons. He buys a launch monitor. He buys a new set of irons, convinced that the equipment was never the problem, but also somehow hoping it was, so the purchase will finally fix the numbers on the scorecard. But the equipment was the problem all along. Not because it's bad equipment, but because it's changing. Slowly every time you hit a shot, while the number on the bottom stays exactly the same. That's the setup. That's the trap. The club in your bag right now is not the club you bought, and it's been lying to you about its identity since the first time you took it to the range. Let me show you what I mean. Irons are built with what's called loft, the angle of the club face that controls how high and how far the ball flies. A typical set spaces its irons about 4 degrees of loft apart, and that spacing is supposed to create the distance gaps you rely on when you reach for a club. Hit a 7-iron one distance, an 8-iron a bit shorter, a 6-iron a bit longer. Clean, predictable, dependable. That's the design. That's the hidden trap the industry never talks about. Your clubs aging in your hands, quietly destroying your distances. Subscribe now because this channel exists to expose the dead money you've been paying without ever realizing it. In the comments, type Loft Creep if you've ever felt like your 7-iron turned into an 8-iron over a season. Dead money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below. But that design assumes the lofts never change, and they do. Every impact is a small collision, a transfer of force between the club face and a ball that's designed to be struck as hard as possible. Over time, that repeated force does something quietly destructive. It bends the loft. The face of a forged iron, in particular, is soft enough to flex, and with enough strikes it gradually weakens, meaning the loft angle increases, the ball flies higher and shorter, and your 7-iron slowly becomes, in terms of its actual performance, an 8-iron. This is called loft drift. It's real, it's well documented among club fitters, and almost no one talks about it because the golfer who doesn't know about it is a golfer who keeps buying new things. Consider this. A single forged iron can lose a degree of loft in a season of normal play. 2 degrees, on some clubs, in less time than that. And here's the twist that makes it ugly. The drift doesn't happen evenly across the set. You hit your favorite clubs more. The 7-iron, the wedge you love, the club you reach for on every tight fairway shot. Those get the most wear, the most drift, the most change in their performance. Meanwhile, the 5-iron sits in the bag, hit rarely. Its loft barely moved at all. The result is a set that was perfectly gapped when it left the factory and gradually becomes a set with holes in it. 2 clubs that now fly the same distance and a gap between clubs where you find yourself guessing, reaching for a shorter or longer club than the shot actually needs. Remember that number I mentioned? The one stamped on the sole? It doesn't lie about the past. It lies about the present. The club tells you this is a 7-iron, so you swing it expecting 7-iron distance. But the metal has been slowly rewriting that promise with every strike, and your body notices the difference before your brain catches on. You feel the ball come off higher, fall shorter, not quite where you planned, and so you do what any reasonable golfer does. You check your grip, your stance, your tempo. You take another lesson. You blame the one thing you think you can control: yourself. Here's the buried number that changes everything. In a test of used clubs, a significant portion of them had their lofts drifted by more than 2 degrees from what the manufacturer specified. 2 degrees. That's the difference between a 7-iron and an 8-iron, half a club of distance stolen from you without a single swing change, without you ever being told that the theft was happening. The moment you realize your clubs have been quietly drifting while the industry tells you to buy new ones, you start seeing every round differently. Subscribe so you don't miss the next buried number we pull out of the dirt, the real cost of trusting the stamp on the sole instead of the metal beneath it. In the comments, type Dead Money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below. If you've ever felt a club fly short and blamed your swing when the loft was the thief. So now, let's do the math the industry doesn't want you to run. A 7-iron has drifted 2 degrees weak. To compensate, you might pull your 6-iron more often, but that club has drifted less because you don't hit it as much. So now you have a 7-iron that flies like an 8, an 8-iron that flies like an 8.5, and a 9-iron that's closer to spec because you only use it for certain shots. The gaps between your clubs are no longer 4 degrees apart. They're inconsistent, unpredictable, and every time you have a shot between 140 and 160 yards, you're gambling. And that inconsistency is expensive. Not in the obvious way, not in the way that shows up on a receipt with a dollar sign. It's expensive in the way that makes you think your swing is broken, your confidence is gone, and your equipment is holding you back. It's the kind of expense that pushes you toward a $1,400 set of new irons, a $600 driver, a $300 fitting session, all to solve a problem that could be fixed for the price of a single adjustment if only you knew the club was the liar. The system is set up to keep you unaware. Whether it's a manufacturer designing irons to be soft and feel great at impact, knowing full well that softness means faster drift, or a pro shop that never mentions loft maintenance because a repaired club doesn't generate a sale, the incentives all point in the same direction. Your ignorance is their revenue. The moment you blame your swing, the machine wins. Tell me in the comments which club you've doubted the most, the one you're convinced you used to hit 10 yards farther, because that suspicion is the first clue that the club has been lying to you. Here's the truth that ties all of this together. Nobody tells you that golf equipment is perishable. You buy it, you assume it stays what it was on the day you bought it, and you judge yourself against a standard that the club itself is failing to meet. But the condition of your clubs is not a measure of your ability. It's a variable, and one that changes with every round you play, whether you're aware of it or not. The question becomes, what do you do with that knowledge? Do you keep buying the industry story, replacing sets every few years in a cycle of dissatisfaction that always seems to end the same way? Or do you treat your clubs like the precision tools they are and take control of the variable that's been quietly sabotaging your scorecard? The smart money, and by that I mean the money that stays in your pocket, starts with a simple step. Get your lofts checked. Any club fitter with a loft and lie machine can tell you, in about 10 minutes, how far your irons have drifted from spec. The cost is a fraction of a new set. The measurement gives you back the truth about your clubs, and from that truth you can rebuild your gapping. Then there's the second step, the one that changes your relationship with the game entirely. Stop reading the number on the sole. Start learning your actual carry distances by loft, not by the label. If your 7-iron has drifted to the point where it performs like an 8-iron, then, for your purposes, it is an 8-iron. Adjust your club selection accordingly, and you'll find that the inconsistency vanishes, replaced by a predictability you thought you'd lost forever. And when you do decide to replace that set, ask the question that almost no one asks. How does this metal age? Forged or cast, soft or hard? How fast will the loft drift? And can the set be adjusted back to spec? A club that can be bent back into shape every season is an investment. A club that drifts and can't be corrected is a recurring cost disguised as a purchase. The calm that settles over your game when you stop fighting invisible variables is something you have to feel to believe. The range sessions stop being a mystery. The gap between your clubs becomes predictable again. Your scorecard reflects your actual skill, not the slowly shifting geometry of clubs that were never as stable as the marketing promised. That realization, that your irons were slowly drifting out of spec while you kept chasing your swing, is the kind of thing that rewires how you look at the whole game. Subscribe so the next hidden variable doesn't take you an entire season to notice. In the comments, write "Dead Money." Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below. If you're ready to stop paying for the industry's silence on Loft drift, here's the part that should make you a little angry, in a measured way. You were set up to think you were the problem. Every lesson that blamed your tempo, every launch monitor that flashed confusing data, every new set of irons that promised consistent distances, all of it was built on the assumption that you'd never check the one thing that was changing all along. Comment the moment you first felt something was off, because that moment, that quiet doubt on the range, was you noticing the truth before you had a name for it. But now you do have a name for it. Loft drift. And once you know the name, you can't unknow it. You'll walk into a fitting session and ask about loft tolerances. You'll mark your calendar to have the set checked every 25 to 30 rounds. You'll stop treating a $40 loft and lie adjustment as an unnecessary expense because you'll understand it's the cheapest insurance against a $1,400 replacement you don't actually need. The transformation is quiet, but it's real. You become the golfer whose clubs are honest, the one who never stands over a shot and wonders which 7-iron will show up today, the one whose friends ask, half-jokingly, how you got your consistency back. And when they ask, you get to explain that the problem was never in their swing. It was in the metal, bending slowly, invisibly, in the direction of their wallet. Because that's what loft drift really is. When you trace it to its root, it's a fee that never appears on a statement. It's a tax on the golfer who doesn't know that his equipment is a perishable good. It's the quiet mechanism that keeps the cycle of replacement spinning, and it works precisely because it's invisible to the person who's paying for it. The next time you set your 7-iron behind the ball, look at the loft printed on the sole and ask yourself who that number belongs to. Does it belong to the manufacturer who stamped it at the factory and walked away? Or does it belong to you, once you've measured it, bent it back to spec, and made the club tell the truth about itself? Drop your answer below. What would you rather trust, the stamp or the angle gauge?